I need you to stop what you're doing right now and pay very close attention to what I'm about to tell you, because there is a storm being tracked right now by the Weather Prediction Center that has some of the most alarming characteristics I have seen in the model data in years, not months, years. And I'm not using that word to get your attention. I'm using it because the numbers coming out of the forecast models over the last 24 hours, the snowfall accumulation totals, the pressure values, the wind shear profiles, the geographic extent of the warning zones, they are numbers that belong to a different category of winter event entirely. Not a bad storm, not a heavy snow event, not the kind of thing you deal with by leaving a little earlier in the morning and keeping your windshield scraper in the car, the kind of storm that shuts down interstates, the kind that collapses roofs, the kind that takes down power grids and leaves hundreds of thousands of people sitting in the dark with temperatures plunging and no heat and no certainty about when the power is coming back. That is what is being forecast. And the reason I need you to hear this early, before it arrives, before it announces itself on radar, before the sky starts doing what the models say it is going to do, is because with a storm of this potential magnitude, the gap between people who prepared and people who did not can be the difference between an inconvenient week and a genuinely life-threatening situation. So let me walk you through everything I know right now, where the system is coming from, what it is going to do, who is in its path, and most importantly, what you need to do before it gets here. The origin story of this storm begins thousands of miles away, which is where all the most dangerous winter events begin. An atmospheric river, a concentrated corridor of moisture flowing eastward off the Pacific Ocean, made landfall along the Pacific Northwest coastline and interacted with a deep reservoir of Arctic air that had been pooling over Canada. That interaction is the spark that ignites the most powerful North American winter storms. When Pacific moisture hits Arctic air, the atmosphere goes to work converting that moisture into precipitation, and when the temperatures are right, that precipitation falls as snow, not as light, fluffy powder, as heavy, dense, water-laden snow that stacks up fast, weighs more per inch than almost any other snow type, and demolishes everything it lands on when the accumulations are measured in feet rather than inches. The system organized into a Colorado low as it emerged from the Rocky Mountains, and from that point forward, the models were screaming at anyone paying attention. A Colorado low is not a casual meteorological term. A Colorado low is a specific type of storm system that forms when a disturbance descends the eastern slopes of the Rocky Mountains and rapidly intensifies as it exits the topographic barrier and moves into the flat terrain of the plains. Colorado lows are the progenitors of the most legendary blizzards in American weather history. They are what produce the multi-foot snow totals across the upper Midwest. They are what generate the blizzard conditions that strand motorists on interstates and shut down entire cities for days. When a Colorado low is deepening rapidly in a moisture-rich environment with a reservoir of cold Arctic air sitting across the northern tier, the atmosphere is assembling all the parts of a classic, textbook, potentially historic winter event. And that is exactly the configuration the system was in as it began tracking northeast out of the Rockies. Let me give you the specific numbers from the warning zones because the specifics are what make this real. The Weather Prediction Center issued winter storm warnings and blizzard warnings across a wide swath of the northern tier, from Washington State all the way east to Michigan's Upper Peninsula, with blizzard warnings specifically issued for most of Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, South Dakota, and parts of northern Michigan. Let me list those states again: Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, South Dakota, northern Michigan, all of them under blizzard warnings simultaneously. Ice storm warnings went up for the northern lower peninsula of Michigan. The sheer geographic footprint of the warning zones tells you something critical about this storm's character. It is not a pinpoint event. It is not a storm that hits one city hard and leaves everything else alone. It is a sprawling, multi-state catastrophe machine, and the people living inside those warning zones need to understand what that means for them personally. The forecasted snowfall totals are the most immediately alarming element of this setup, and I want to be very specific with you because I think vague numbers fail people when it comes to understanding what they are actually about to experience. The models were showing 36 to 48 inches of snow, 3 to 4 feet, across the upper Midwest and high plains in the core of the heaviest accumulation zone, 3 to 4 feet. Think about what 4 feet of snow looks like standing next to an average adult. Think about what 4 feet of snow does to a car parked in a driveway. Think about what 4 feet of snow does to a roof that was built to handle typical Midwest winters, not a once-in-a-generation snowfall event. And think about what happens in those areas when the snow is accompanied by wind gusts forecast above 60 miles per hour, because that is exactly what was on the wind forecast maps. 60 miles per hour, winds with 4 feet of snow in the air, creates zero visibility, completely impassable roads, and a physical environment where being outside becomes life-threatening within minutes. That is what blizzard conditions mean, not just heavy snow. Zero visibility, wind-driven snow so thick that you cannot see your hand in front of your face, complete whiteout. And that is what was being forecast for communities across the upper Midwest. The central pressure of the system as it approached peak intensity was forecast to drop to approximately 983 millibars over the Great Lakes, a pressure reading that is not a winter storm number. It is a hurricane number, not a warm core tropical system, but a cold core extratropical cyclone deepening to pressures that produce some of the most extreme surface wind fields you can get from a winter storm in the continental United States. When a low-pressure system hits 983 millibars over the upper Midwest, the pressure gradient between that storm center and the surrounding air mass is tight enough to drive sustained winds that down power lines, rip shingles from roofs, snap mature trees at the trunk, and turn the snow in the air into a weapon moving at highway speeds. The combination of that pressure reading and the moisture available in this particular system was what had forecasters so concerned days in advance. This was not going to be a snowstorm that people drove through slowly. This was going to be a storm that people could not drive through at all. Let's talk about what blizzard warnings actually mean versus what most people think they mean, because I hear this misunderstood constantly, and it matters enormously for how you respond. A blizzard warning is not issued when there is going to be a lot of snow. A blizzard warning is issued when the National Weather Service has determined that 3 specific simultaneous conditions will exist in your area: sustained winds or frequent gusts of 35 miles per hour or more, falling or blowing snow that reduces visibility to a quarter mile or less, and these conditions expected to persist for at least 3 hours. Those 3 conditions together, wind, visibility, duration, are what define a blizzard. And when those conditions exist simultaneously for an extended period, the outdoors becomes functionally impassable. You cannot safely drive. You cannot safely walk. You cannot safely do anything outside. The warning is not a suggestion to be careful. It is a statement from professional meteorologists with decades of training that going outside during the warning period carries genuine risk of death. That is what a blizzard warning is. And this system was forecast to produce those conditions across multiple states for extended periods. Now let me tell you what the storm was also doing simultaneously on its southern flank, because this is the element of this setup that makes it unlike a standard blizzard. While the northern side of the system was producing life-threatening blizzard conditions from the Dakotas through Wisconsin and Michigan, the southern side was simultaneously generating a major severe weather outbreak across the lower Mississippi Valley, the Southeast, the Carolinas, and up into the mid-Atlantic states. The same storm system that was burying the upper Midwest under 4 feet of snow was triggering damaging winds, large hail, and tornadoes across portions of Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, the Carolinas, and Virginia. This is the brutal reality of major extratropical cyclones. They do not just do one thing. They are enormous, complex atmospheric machines that deliver completely different types of catastrophic weather to different parts of the country simultaneously. The people in Green Bay were dealing with horizontal snow and 60-mile-per-hour winds at the same time that people in Bloomington, Indiana, were getting tornado warnings. Those events were being produced by the same low-pressure system. That geographic duality is what makes systems like this one so difficult to fully communicate to the public. Because depending on where you live, your version of the storm looks completely different. For the Midwest and Upper Plains, the storm's delivery was historic in the most literal, measurable sense of that word. Green Bay, Wisconsin, picked up 26. 6 inches of snow. The city's heaviest snowstorm since a March storm in 1888 dropped 29 inches. 1888. For 138 years, the record had stood. And the storm nearly matched it. Wind gusts in Des Peres, near Green Bay, reached 60 miles per hour, producing verified blizzard conditions and prompting Milwaukee County to declare a snow emergency, the county's first blizzard warning in 15 years. The National Weather Service Forecast Office, located just outside Marquette, Michigan, in the Upper Peninsula, recorded 36, 3 inches of snow over a 2-day period, an all-time 2-day snowfall record at that station, and records dating back to 1959. Lake-enhanced snow that lingered after the primary storm pumped totals in the higher terrain of Michigan's Upper Peninsula to 52 inches at some locations. Round Lake in the Upper Peninsula logged 54 inches of snow. 54 inches. That is 4.5 feet of snow from a single storm system. Near Grayling in northern lower Michigan, 0. 28 inches of freezing rain accumulated on top of the snow. And 0, 28 inches of ice on power lines, tree branches, and infrastructure is enough to bring all of it down. Michigan's governor declared a state of emergency for 7 counties. The state's Emergency Operations Center was activated. At one point, 140,000 Michigan residents were without power as the storm moved through. Interstates 35, 80, and 90 were shut down in southern Minnesota and Iowa because the roads simply ceased to be navigable. Minnesota State Patrol reported 464 crashes between midnight March 13th and late on March 15th, 40 involving injuries and 1 fatality. Over 500,000 customers across the United States lost power during the storm. Let that number land. 500,000 households, 500,000 families, sitting without electricity as temperatures behind the storm plunged well below freezing, with wind chills dropping into the negative single digits across the Midwest and near zero across parts of the plains. When you lose power at 5 degrees Fahrenheit with a wind chill of -10, the interior of an unheated house does not stay comfortable for long. It gets dangerous within hours for the elderly, for young children, for people with medical conditions requiring powered equipment. 5,000 flights were canceled in a single day. Seattle, Washington, over 1,000 miles from the blizzard's core, received 1 to 2 inches of snow on March 13th as the system made its initial landfall, and hundreds of flights were delayed at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, before the worst of it even reached the central United States. And here is the number that puts all of it in historical context, the number that the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration uses to measure how significant a winter storm truly was relative to everything that has come before it. The Regional Snowfall Index. NOAA's RSI is a scale from 0 to 5 that measures winter storm impact based on snowfall totals, geographic extent, and the population affected. Category 5 on that scale is labeled extreme, since NOAA began retroactively calculating RSI values for winter storms going back to 1900. Over 500 storms analyzed, only 27 storms in the entire historical record have ever been assigned a Category 5 extreme designation. 27 in over a century of winter weather, and the most recent storm to earn that rating before this one was the January 2016 blizzard, 10 years earlier. This storm scored a 26.97 on the RSI, not a Category 4, not a strong Category 4 that barely missed, Category 5 extreme. One of 27 storms in 125 years of American winter weather history to earn that designation. That is the company this storm keeps. The blizzard of 1978, the blizzard of 1996, the historic Northeast storms of the 20th century. And now this one. Here's what I need from you, and I need you to hear this very clearly, regardless of whether this storm is approaching your area or whether it has already passed through before you are watching this. A storm of this magnitude does not respect the assumption that it will not be as bad as forecast. The people who did not take the blizzard of 1978 seriously did not survive it. The people who drove onto Iowa highways on the night this storm peaked and found themselves stranded in whiteout conditions with temperatures crashing below zero, those people were in serious danger. Winter storm preparation is not about inconvenience avoidance. It is about survival margin. It is about the difference between being caught outside in a blizzard and being safe inside with enough supplies, enough warmth, and enough communication ability to get through whatever the atmosphere delivers. Before any major winter storm of this caliber arrives, you do 3 things without exception. First, you stock enough supplies for at least 72 hours of self-sufficiency. Food that does not require cooking, water, medications, battery-powered lighting, and extra blankets or sleeping bags that can keep you warm if your home loses heat. Second, you charge every device, every power bank, every battery backup you own before the storm arrives. Because once the power goes out in a blizzard, you may not get it back for days. Third, you do not drive. I cannot say this clearly enough. In blizzard warning conditions, driving is not inconvenient. It is potentially fatal. Interstates were literally shut down in this storm. Visibility dropped to 0. People who attempted to drive were stranded, sometimes for hours, sometimes overnight, in temperatures that kill. Stay home. The road can wait. Your life cannot. Above everything else, check on your neighbors. The people most likely to die in a winter storm of this magnitude are the ones who are alone, who have no one checking on them, who lose power, and have no way to communicate that they need help. Be that check. Be the person who knocks on the door or makes the call before the storm arrives, during the lull, and after it passes. That simple act of human connection has saved more lives in winter storms than any government emergency resource. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and treat a storm that earns a Category 5 on NOAA's Regional Snowfall Index with exactly the respect that number demands. I love every single one of you. Stay safe.